Montana is a big place where you can drive for hours through landscape and sky. Billings is the largest city in Montana, but that's not saying a lot because Billings is still like a town.
In Montana, you can always tell the people who are from Montana and the people who are not, because you walk down the street and you say hello, you know, and the ones from Montana invariably say hello.
Hi.
You can still find a parking place downtown, and the shop owners know their customers.
Hello there, Debbie and Stella. 收打记得喽。
It's a beautiful place to grow up, and it's a beautiful place to raise your children.
Seems pretty idyllic, doesn't it? But there's a crack in this pastoral scene.
Anytime, any minute, something could happen.
In the past few years, Billings has been struck by a series of hate crimes that jolted this community into action.
They have vowed to drive the minorities out of the Northwest.
First, it was hate flyers distributed around town.
I found tucked in my Sunday paper at my door a Ku Klux Klan newspaper.
And the vandalism started.
Really hurt inside, and I never had to explain that type of thing to my children.
Finally, it turned violent.
We couldn't be targeted anymore. And the next step was going to be death, and I just couldn't, or to be harmed in some way, and I just wasn't going to allow that for my kids. But the fear I truly did have was that fear of indifference that the community might have felt. And that was the biggest risk that I was taking. What if they weren't going to respond? Where was I to go next?
But the people of Billings did respond, and that's what this story is all about. We went to the local newspaper to find out where the recent wave of hate crimes was coming from. Reporter Greg McCracken covered the story for the Billings Gazette. He showed us some of the flyers that were smeared around town. Well, they went through a lot of trouble for this one. Who are these people?
I think it's a group with a high potential for danger, and I think that's why there was such reaction. We've seen communities in this region, you know, the Aryan nations have targeted this 5-state region as their homeland.
They have said to me, we, by whatever means, will purify the Northwest and create an Aryan homeland. And we don't care what tactic we use. If we have to kill a few, it makes no difference. We are going to make the Northwest free of Afro-Americans, of Hispanics.
Police Chief Wayne Inman investigated some of the white supremacists in Montana.
To me, that represents a major threat. That's revolution. That's terrorism.
Although it's unclear which organized hate groups have been involved in the racial harassment in Billings, a few white supremacists are publicly known around town. James Pace, a self-proclaimed skinhead, threatened the lives of police and community leaders. John Abar admits he wrote some of the flyers. He works with a local Ku Klux Klan youth support group called Montana Quest. Rudy Butch Stanko spent over 5 years in prison for selling tainted meat to a school lunch program. Stanko ran for Justice of the Peace in Billings and gained over 1,600 votes.
We're too deep. We're embedded now. Don't you understand? We're in your colleges. We're in your armies. We're in your police forces.
Many of the ordinary citizens here are determined not to let hate groups gain a foothold in their town. And this is where your parents live? Randy Seamers lives with his family just outside Billings. When the hate crimes first started, he went to a meeting with religious and community leaders.
There were people there that witnessed their experiences. A Native American woman whose children were harassed on the way home from school by skinheads sitting in a car. A black man who had been receiving death threats. Homosexual individuals that are constantly assailed.
As I listened and sat there during those meetings, I said to myself, well, I've felt that way. As a trade unionist, that has happened to me. And it's wrong for it to happen to me, and it's wrong for it to happen to my neighbors.
Randy Seamers is an organizer with the Laborers Union. He took his concerns to the Central Labor Council. Early on, they passed a strongly worded resolution against hate crimes.
By the language here, for so long, African Americans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, Jews, Hispanics, gays, lesbians, women, and those with disabilities have been targeted by organized hate groups.
Randy also got members of the Laborers Union to work with local police on security at anti-hate rallies in Billings.
Organized labor across the country, in my mind, does these type of things. They come out early, they come out strong, they come out right. It was the right thing to do, but I feel we're also expected to do things like this. So.
Law enforcement officials also responded early to the hate crimes.
I think that you react very quickly to it. You react strongly. You show that those particular groups that you're not going to tolerate it in your community.
If a police chief doesn't take a visible and active role, then there's an assumption that everything is all right. And these hate groups have learned through experience that if a community doesn't respond, then the community accepts. Silence is acceptance to them.
The official police response was so strong from the very beginning.
Sarah Anthony is chairperson of the Billings Human Rights Coalition. I talked to Sarah on the rim above town. Her outspoken activity against hate groups also made her a target.
Once I could sort of realize that fear is exactly what they had in mind for me, you know, if they want me to be silent, then that's not going to happen.
Could I leave a message for her?
The Human Rights Coalition gathered over 6,000 signatures and over 100 resolutions from local groups against the hate activity in Billings. But the harassment continued. In September, graves in the Jewish cemetery were desecrated and overturned.
That sent a very clear message to every Jewish person in Billings that you all are our targets.
Uri Barnea is director of the symphony. He grew up in Israel with his parents, who escaped Nazi Germany. Like other Jews in Billings, Uri Barnea was also a target.
There were some stickers next to the synagogues with swastikas or want oil, nuke Israel type of stickers and posters. And I think not long after that, my home was attacked. And that was the first home that was actually attacked during the wave of violent activities here.
How was it attacked?
A beer bottle was tossed through the front door, the storm door of my house.
Tammy Schnitzer and her husband Brian are members of the Human Rights Coalition and have also been targets of hate crimes.
We have a burglar alarm system in the house. We have guns in the basement locked up, and that's not going to protect my children from a brick coming through the window. It's not going to instill that sense of pride that they should feel as they're walking down the street and proclaim that they're Jewish.
Tammy Schnitzer is fourth-generation Billings. She married physician Brian Schnitzer and converted to Judaism.
Met my husband 14 years ago, and he sat me down with after a few days and said that there was something that he needed to confess to me. And I couldn't imagine what it was going to be about, and that's when he confessed that he was Jewish. I thought that was just really strange that he felt like he needed to confess being Jewish. To confess that I was Lutheran was just a bit absurd. And maybe because I converted to Judaism, it was easier for me to take a stance, because I knew what it was like to be in Billings, Montana. And not being Jewish, I knew what that quality of life was all about, and I wanted that same life for my kids.
But for many minorities in Billings, the quality of life is diminished by everyday prejudice.
I think personally, day after day, hour after hour, I feel that.
Janice Huditz owns a craft store downtown. Like other Native Americans we met, she is very familiar with intolerance.
There's all this subtle racism that is just constant, day in, day out.
But there was nothing subtle about what happened to one Native American family on an October night. Just before midnight, while Dawn Fasthorse was at home with her boyfriend and 4 children, swastikas and hate messages were painted on the outside of her house.
Someone writing that on my house, having my children see it, having me feel like that, that'll always be there.
Sarah Anthony went to see Dawn Fasthorse to find out how the community could support her. She then called Bob Maxwell from the Painters Union and asked for help.
Told me about the house and whatnot that was vandalized, and I told her we'd be more than happy to get over there and take care of it for him. And it was kind of interesting because we wanted to get it off there as quick as possible, and I made a couple calls, and most of the guys, they were all putting in 8-hour shifts, and I was really surprised when 30 of them showed up the next night.
So many of the times there's a cause and I end up standing on the sidelines too much. I would feel something, but I never really did a lot to do anything about anything. And I was really glad to help paint the house, and more so to help convey a message to these guys that the community will not stand for that.
I thought it was just going to be one of them get-togethers, paint the house out, and then go back to the hall and have a couple of beers. After we seen the whole area and that part of town show up and start watching us paint the house, that's when it struck me that, hey, we are making a difference here.
Along with the painters, nearly 100 community members showed up at Dawn's house.
It made me feel really good. You know, I didn't think there would be that many people there.
And for me personally, one that bothered me the most was going over to that house and seeing the small children there. They were old enough to read, but not old enough to understand. And no matter what we did, we covered the house up. We made it look brand new, but what do you do with those children's memories? They're scarred.
Once you're attacked based on your race or your sexual preference, you're scarred for life. And there's many people that I affected that way. There's many people that will never forget my face.
From the time he was a 14-year-old until he was 21, Clinton Sipes was an ardent and violent racist.
All the things that these people are doing here are all the things that I did when I first started. I first started with pamphlets and stuff like that, and then escalated into malicious mischief, you know, vandalism and stuff like that, and then it got worse. Then it got escalated into great bodily injury.
Clinton Sipes moved to Billings, Montana from Northern California. He says he is no longer a white supremacist. After years in prison and a lot of soul-searching, he is now trying to make up for everything he did.
Meaningful, symbolical picture. It's a major turning point in my life. That was a cross I was going to burn on a black family salon.
When he saw the hate crimes begin in his new town, he decided to help the local police and alert the community to the danger of hate crimes.
It was very violent, and it only takes a small handful of people, like the person that I was when I was involved, to do a lot of damage.
Sipes formed a group called Children Escaping Racist Environments. Sipes says he wants to help other young people escape the world of racial hatred.
I think if somebody would have just come and told me, you know, and tried to teach me some things about, you know, people, that I would have, you know, maybe felt differently. Wouldn't have been so angry, but no one ever did. The things that I was involved with, I should be in prison for the rest of my life. All that I can do is just tell people of my experience. And hopefully people will listen.
Lose all of thy gift,
Reverend Bob Freeman is minister of Wayman Chapel, the African Methodist Episcopal Church. This small congregation was the target of harassment and intimidation.
I just feel that any time, any minute, something could happen.
Racist graffiti was painted on a wall near the church, and not long after that, a group of skinheads came into the church and stood at the back with their arms folded.
And then they would go over here, stand about here with this kind of a look, just a challenging, daring look. And they stand there a few minutes, then they would go back over there and sit down again.
But again, people in the town responded. Sarah Anthony and other church activists started attending services at Wayman Chapel.
Denominations didn't count, ethnic background didn't count, color of skin didn't count. It was just that we were one people all together as one. And they did rally around, let them know, hey, if you bite one, you bite us all. And that was a very good feeling we had.
In 1989, white supremacists connected to the Aryan nations beat an Ethiopian student, Mulugeta Serra, to death.
Clubbed to death because he was black.
Wayne Inman was a Portland police officer at the time.
Over time, the acts of these hate groups, in particular the skinheads and the Aryan Nation, resulted in the death of a black man for no other reason except that man was black. That was the wake-up call for the city of Portland. Now, based on that experience, I knew that a community can respond and doesn't have to wait until there's a serious incident like a death before everybody says, not in our town.
In early December, a section of cinder block crashed through a window in the Schnitzer family home. 6-year-old Isaac Schnitzer had placed a menorah in his window for Hanukkah, the Jewish celebration of freedom from religious persecution. The cinder block landed on Isaac's bed. Luckily, he wasn't in it. Tammy Schnitzer came home from a meeting to find her husband Brian in Isaac's bedroom.
Brian was in this very cold children's bedroom, rocking in a chair with no sheets, and the room was vacuumed, crying. An emergency room physician who's seen some horrible things, who's been under control for many, many years, suddenly broken down. I remember discussing it with the publisher of the Gazette the next morning after this had happened and saying that please make this front page news because I want people to understand what it's like to be Jewish.
Religious and community leaders wondered how to help the town understand what it was like to be persecuted.
I guess it was a question of looking for an image that kind of put this together.
Gary Svee, an editor at the Billings Gazette, recalls how the Danish king used a symbol to thwart the Nazis in World War II.
At least to me, was during the Second World War, the Danish king is reputed to have come out after the Jewish community there was forced to wear stars by the Nazi occupiers, that he was reported to have come out with a yellow star too.
In the spirit of the Danish king, the newspaper printed a full-page menorah for townspeople to tear out and hang in their windows. On December 2nd, 1993, someone twisted by hate threw a brick through the window of the home of one of our neighbors. Today, members of religious faiths throughout Billings are joining together to ask residents to display the menorah as a symbol of something else, our determination to live together in harmony and our dedication to the principle of religious liberty embodied in the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America.
The good thing about this town is that everybody said that one day, let's get together. So what we're going to do is put menorahs in our windows, and pretty soon everybody we knew had one.
A few days after the menorahs started appearing around town, 6 homes with the symbol in their windows and a Methodist church were all vandalized. The police and the community leaders urged all the citizens in town to redouble their efforts to get menorahs in windows.
They called me and said, is it dangerous? I said, there is some risk, but if we don't take some risk, we're never going to make the major gain. If we put up thousands of menorahs, if we double and redouble our efforts, there are just too many out there. They can't possibly get everybody's window.
Local Quickway stores and dry cleaners distributed printed menorahs. Employees of this athletic store put up their own message of support.
I think the question about what we would have done had we been in Germany, in Nazi Germany during the Second World War when these things were coming on, that should haunt all of us.
By late December, nearly 10,000 people in Billings, Montana had menorahs in their windows.
I have to say the most touching response was to open the door at 7 in the morning and have little Rebecca Bacon, my son's 5-year-old Pierre, stand at the door with his menorah that she had made and asked if she could come and help hang this in Isaac's bedroom. That still brings a lot of tears to my eyes, to have this little girl who had the sense enough and the understanding enough to know how important this was for Isaac, and most importantly to have the guidance of her mother behind her. I knew then that going public with this was the right thing to do.
It's not the public display that is going to resolve the problem. It's the day-to-day understanding of the people that this is not the way to act against each other.
So I would like to have thought that if this had happened to my Native American community, that they would have put a Native American symbol in their window. If it happened to the gay and lesbian community, that they would have put a pink triangle in their window. I would have liked to have hoped or think that they would have done that.
If it's not an empty symbol, if it's not an empty gesture, then there is hope.
I mean, after all, these are our neighbors. If somebody threw a brick through your neighbor's house in Montana, you run out there and try to stop them. Don't they do that anywhere else in the country?
Randy Seamers is like many other people in this town, puzzled at the national attention they're getting for standing up for their neighbors. For the moment, their stand is holding. There have been no more reported acts of hate violence in recent months, but the threat remains.
In this particular case, I think the best part of it surfaced. I was very proud of Billings for that. Just one tiny candle we lit, and it wasn't much, but that was something.
I really like Billings, Montana a lot. Life seemed, I don't know, simpler here. I don't mean simpler like not as smart or less sophisticated. I mean more straightforward. You know, it's been called the all-American city. You gotta like that. Especially if you think that America is a place where ordinary citizens will put themselves on the front lines to fight the everyday battle against intolerance. And I'm not sure it's a war that will ever be won without the Bob Maxwells and the Sarah Anthonys and the Reverend Freemans. It surely will be lost. Today, not in our town. Tomorrow, not in our country. It's a nice thought.
And what I'd like us to do now, we've got an hour and 20 minutes to flesh out a plan here. So I'd like everyone to have a chance to introduce themselves, who they're representing, and if you would say something particular about what brought you here tonight, whether or not you've had some personal experience in the community that reflects the issues we're faced with, if a neighbor has, or maybe something that really struck you about that video that you'd like us to make sure we get back to in the next phase after the introductions. And if you keep it real brief, I'd appreciate it so we can make sure we cover all the territory we need to. My co-host for the evening, Glenn.
Well, thanks everyone for coming. I'm impressed by the turnout here. There were really two things that struck me about that, the video. One is I'm really proud of Billings. We tend to have this kind of municipal competition, and it's really kind of heartwarming to see Billings, out there doing something like that. So that was encouraging. The other thing that strikes me, having, we've wrestled with this problem, this issue in our community for a number of years. In my experience as mayor, it kind of first propped up probably 2 or 2.5 years ago when there was one of these lit drops, and a woman called me who got it on her doorstep, and she was just really offended and wanted to know how this could happen and what could we do about it. And we've, since then, Pete Lawrenson has kind of set up a file so that we track wherever there's a lit drop, and we try to have a sense of where it's going, where it's happening. Our ability to respond in a law enforcement way is pretty limited. And we necessarily need to react when there is a particular incident. I think most recently of the Matthew Shepard case in Wyoming, and there was a strong community reaction. But really, what we've got to do is deeper than that. I think the Yuri, I didn't catch his last name. He used to be, what is it? Barney. Kind of said it the most clearly, is that what we have to do is within our culture, build a level of understanding and civic appreciation that you just don't do this. That's not acceptable in this community. And there are all kinds of things that are acceptable, but doing those sorts of things isn't. That's long-term and pretty hard to do. So, let me pass it on. I think that it is important for us to respond immediately, but the larger task, I think, is much more difficult and challenging. So hopefully we can spend some time talking about that.
I'm Jessica Kovas, and I'm the president of the student body at the university. I have very strong ties to the gay and lesbian community in Missoula and in the state of Montana. And also, I just returned from a trip to Israel, sponsored by the American Jewish Committee. So I really feel a sort of kinship for the Jewish people in the state of Montana, although they are far and few between. After spending some time in Israel, you really start to understand what it's like to be different and what it's like to be persecuted. And it helped me to understand more so what it's like for anyone, women, homosexuals, African Americans, and anyone in our community, and especially at the university where we pride ourselves on our diversity. I don't want to see anything like this happen in Missoula.
My name is Martha Kay Nelson, and I'm working right now at the Jeanette Rankin Peace Center, getting this new Cultivating Compassion program going. We're pretty excited about it over there. A lot of good things I think are going to happen, and I'm pleased to see the turnout tonight of all you folks coming out and being willing to share your experiences and what you think we can do to make Missoula a great place to live. I'm also just here as myself, as a young person in Missoula who already at 25, I feel really invested in this community. And I just want to make sure that it's a place where we all feel comfortable and safe to live. So I'm here.
Scott Morgan, City Council, Quaker or a member of the Society of Friends since age 5, along with all that that entails. Returned Peace Corps volunteer.
I'm Bill DeCoo. I'm a member of the board for the Jeanette Rankin Peace Center. I'm Quaker. I requested conscientious objector status during the Vietnam War, which was subjected to me some hate. More recently, in the last 15 years, I've dealt with mental illness and I face some discrimination because of that. I want to do what I can to work with the community to see that kind of stuff doesn't happen to other people.
I'm Maureen Edwards. I teach at Lowell Middle School. And I don't know other parts of Missoula, but at Lowell we've got a strong anti-Russian sentiment that sometimes comes out in the kids. And so I've been teaching prejudice students, and I just want to know what's going on citywide so that we can, get some ideas from each other.
I'm Anita Coriel. I live in East Missoula. For years, I worked with Scott Morgan with the Alternatives to Violence Project. And I think with that project, it's both the short-term alternatives to violence when you're in the thick of the moment, and then it's the long-term, which is building community and unity amongst all people, which I try to work hard to do in my life. I also have a daughter who's Asian, so I'm very vested in finding solutions.
I'm John Torma. I'm the facilities manager for the Missoula Children's Theater, and I'm also involved with the leadership team of the University Area Neighborhood Council. In fact, there are 5 of us here tonight that were involved with the leadership team of the Neighborhood Council from the university area. And I was very glad that Sally sent these notices to the neighborhood councils. I think it is a network throughout the city that could and should very readily pick up on this particular issue. I think the reason we're involved in neighborhood councils is to build community, and this activity of the hate messages and hate crimes certainly does the opposite of that. Everything we do in local politics ought to militate against the hate messages that are out there and work ultimately towards building community.
You must excuse me. Go ahead.
I'm Ralph Stone. I'm with the Missoula Advocates for Social Justice, which is an affiliate of the Montana Human Rights Network. And I'm on the board of the network and currently the president of the board. I want to thank Sally, too, for bringing the group together tonight. I hope that we could have more groups from other areas of Missoula meet in similar fashion. I know quite a few of the people in the film, Tammy Schnitzer and Sarah Anthony and others, and have worked with them over the years. I think we are potentially confronting in Missoula, and have confronted, but are potentially confronting serious vandalism and violence of the kind that occurred in Billings with the Church of the Creator. Rudy Stanko, Butch Stanko, who was mentioned in the film and spent 5 months in prison, was the heir to Ben Klassen, who founded the Church of the Creator and was considered to be the Pontifex Maximus for a time before he and Matt Hale got into a dispute, and Hale is now the leader of the Church of the Creator, and from what we know will be in Missoula on Thursday night prior to the meeting this weekend of the Church of the Creator up in Superior. So it can happen here. It has happened here with the literature, and it's preparatory to more serious acts if we don't stand up and say that we won't tolerate that kind of hate and potential crime. People have a right to free speech, obviously, but we have an obligation on our part to stand up and say that that kind of hate is not acceptable to us.
My name's Ann Carpenter, and some of you might know me from one place or another. Basically, I want to say first, I'm a Christian. And so whatever I say might be prefaced with that. Also, I work for the Internal Revenue Service, and yes, I'm a tax collector, and so a lot of, I see a lot of the community in the surrounding area, the state even, all different walks of life from it, and I hear what they have to say. There's a lot of people out there that don't have support groups to talk to. But one of the basic concerns that I have up to this point is the fact that a lot of the things that's been allowed in the city to promulgate things of the darker nature that we'd rather not have. And that, you know, would be a starting point of maybe doing something like that.
I'm Liz Rance. A lot of different ties to this kind of activity. I think the thing that makes this session most interesting to me personally, though, is the experience of raising 4 sons in this town with the lack of diversity and the referred to as the redneck conservatism. It's very difficult, having grown up in the San Francisco area, to listen to some of the things that my children say and to know where they're hearing it and not feel real good about how to respond. And I'd like to see some major changes made in the way the Missoulians see each other.
Liz, you might mention the organization that you're so involved with, just so people, if they're not aware, will be.
Well, I'm the head of a group called the People of Faith, People of Action, which is an interdenominational, non-denominational group of people, many of whom are sitting over there.
My name is John Host. I've spent a few years on the planning board and the board of adjustments, and now I'm kind of working with the neighborhood communities. And I got an invitation to come here. I don't know why, except I guess I'm a troublemaker. And but anyway, it sounds like a very good program getting started.
I'm Mitchie Bender, and evidently I received an invitation probably through the Granite Creek Neighborhood Council. And I have just recently viewed a video that the Southern Law Poverty Center has for elementary school teachers, which was very interesting. And I'm just very interested in possibly trying to teach tolerance at a very young age.
Perry Gleesman, I've been involved in Northside Neighborhood Association activities one sort or another for a while, and also in years past took part in some of the human rights activities in Coeur d'Alene I guess I'm kind of intrigued about the idea of answering some of the pamphlets and hate activity on a neighborhood basis. I really hadn't thought of that before. I think there's the two things that always strike me is when things like this happen, I hope we all realize that there is the day-to-day racism that we've all grown up with, either being victimized by it or participating in it or witnessing it happen. I mean, it's something that's in every town, everywhere, every day. Something we all have to deal with and try to change. But there's also something kind of special that struck me in Coeur d'Alene when the Aryan Nations activity was getting a lot of publicity there, was the sense of fear and intimidation that people there felt to even stand up and say that they disagreed with some of the attitudes being said. People did not feel like they could stand up in the town that they had grown up in and speak in favor of human rights without becoming a potential target. And that's the special kind of threat that I think the leafleting and the young rough and tumble shock troops of the Nazi movement present.
My name is Pam Dietrich. I just got an invitation to be here. I live on the north side. I was also impressed with the Billings video because I grew up in Billings, and there's been a long-standing thing of prejudice against the Hispanic and Indian population there, and it's deep. And it's nice to know that somebody came out and did something for once. You know, for many years, all the way through school, people watched it happen. I am also been involved with one of the Coeur d'Alene actions, and I was amazed at how they showed us just how strong they were going to be by bringing truckloads of their children around while they were preaching this stuff. And I think that's right. That's what we have to do. Start very young with our children, because that's what they're doing.
My name is Kathleen Tarleson, and I'm a member of the Patty Canyon Barley's Neighborhood Council. And I just recently moved back to Missoula after being away for quite a few years, and just more here as a concerned citizen, mother of minority children, and just wondering what their life here is going to be like growing up in Missoula. So hopefully we can make it a good place.
My name is Kathy Crowley Haywood, and I'm here from the Northside Neighborhood Council. And mostly I came because I think we have a big opportunity coming up this weekend, and wanted to know kind of maybe from people who've been to other similar things, what would be the best way to approach that situation. And also concerned about Missoula's long-term future and our country's long-term future. About prejudice.
My name is Mary Ann Stimpling. I'm a Northside resident. I'm very concerned about the growth of Missoula and the things going on and the changes we're going through, and how to get everybody together to realize we're all individuals, we're all people, not just groups of masses of people that are on the other side of town. And just
It's a full-time job.
Yeah, sure. Just to see how we can deal with these situations, and like you say, not be angry, but not let it ride either.
Yes, I'm Don Stinger, and I got 2 invitations, so I brought my wife along. One from the neighborhood council and one from the neighborhood network. We've lived in the Orchard Homes, in the same house, for many years, and we've had, since we were both born and raised on most of our schooling on the reservation. I went to the 2nd and the 8th grade here in Missoula, and the rest of it was at either West Ronan or out at ROE. And we were raised in the with Native Americans, and I have some Native American blood myself, and I have first cousins that are on the rolls Flathead Reservation, and so they, by these area nation peoples, are classed as colored or whatever. They're not, they're not white. And we've gotten these pamphlets. The first one was about 3 years ago, and then again last spring. Go out in the morning and find them there, and I don't like the idea of sneaking through there, this thing they have. And then now they're starting, from the Coeur d'Alene area, starting hiding behind a church. That especially. I've been in every county in the state of Montana when I was in the trucking business, and with the Hutterites and the Amish, and those people do truly live their religion, and they're honest, and and these things that their roots came from Europe, and they're a completely different breed than this thing. And I just want to see what we can do, because the more publicity they get, the better they like it. Somehow we've got to figure out a way to ignore the thing or do something and get the communities organized enough to ignore and get something out to answer their thing, because it's insidious.
I'm interested here, and as you said, you got 2 invitations, but really I'm interested because what I read in those pamphlets that they send out just really made me angry, and I just hate to see that distributed, because I know a lot of people are reading it and believing it, and I just don't like it.
My name's Bill Comstock. I have a family of 3 children, 15, 11, and 7. I'm the leadership team of the Orchard Homes, Emma Dickinson Neighborhood Council, and also a member of that neighborhood council's education watchdog working group. I'm also a member of the Site-Based Advisory Committee for the Hawthorne School. Have functioned in Title Steering Committee and advisory committees and PTAs within all the schools my children did, and obviously very interested in education in our community, and very interested in safety and the concerns of violence and intolerance and bigotry as it's fostered in our school system or maybe fought within our school system. I want to make a couple little comments on a film that I'm sure will engage in discussion. Thank Ms. Thompson for thinking to reach out to the neighborhood council system for this. I think that's really productive, and as you commented, we're in some senses struggling a little bit to find our identity and our role in this community. I think this type of thing is really a great thing. We've got good representation here, but one thing I think the film emphasized is there appeared to be law enforcement and media involvement at a fairly high level in the Billings situation. We haven't gotten all the way around, but I'm not seeing any of that here, and I wish we had. It seems to me that would be an essential part of such a thing. One other little comment, I think part of tolerance is recognizing people's differences and not bigotry is characterizing people's characteristics based on certain other characteristics. And they started the film out in a very lighthearted sense, talking about how you could characterize Montanans versus non-Montanans. And I don't think that's real productive to think that way. I think we all know it's just as likely a non-native is going to say hello to you on the street as a native. And it's a very small point, but let's not start out thinking that way.
I'm Ann Blair, and I'm from the East Side Neighborhood Association. Historic East Side Neighborhood Association, sorry.
And the person who actually planted the seed for the idea of this meeting tonight, thank you, Ann.
Well, actually, that was Kay and Rosemary. They called me and said, come on, let's put. Anyway, we wanted to present a united front as a neighborhood when these pamphlets started showing up to show we weren't interested, that nobody in the neighborhood was interested, and after our meeting decided it would be much more effective on a citywide public basis than just an isolated neighborhood here and there. And that's where we're coming from, whatever we decided to do. I think it has to be very public, and I think it has to be citywide.
My name is Catherine Pappas, and I'm a member of the Historic Eastside Neighborhood Association. And I'm also a preschool teacher at the Children's Center in St. Joseph, and it's important for me to help these little children along. I'm a first generation here. My father immigrated from Greece many, many years ago. He was probably one of the oldest Greek men in the state of Montana when he passed away. And he told me many, many stories about when he came to America. And I love my Missoula, and I don't want anything to happen to it. I was deeply, deeply offended by the literature that was on our doorstep. And I think I called 911 twice that day. And my mother said, "Why did you do that, Reenie?" Well, I didn't know what else to do. And we're here, and I'm very happy that I met all of you people. And I'm looking forward to many other sessions like this. Thank you.
I'm Rosemary Fishburne, and we're all board members for the Historic Eastside Neighborhood Association. And we were responding, as Ann already said, to the literature showing up in our neighborhood. I wanted to point out that the PBS has done a follow-up movie to the one that you saw tonight, in which they showed towns all over the country that had borrowed ideas from this movie and from this experience and applied it to their own towns. So it has already lit a candle, as somebody in there said. I think that two things we have to concentrate on are, one of them is that all the possibly affected minorities in town know that their local association council or whatever or something should know if anything happens to them. They must let the rest of us know so that we can respond as they responded there. And other than that, I think, as Ann said, citywide is better, but it has to be affected through the neighborhoods so that it is really neighbor to neighbor, supporting each other.
Introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you. My name is Guadalupe Hilliard, and I represent the Upper Rattlesnake Neighborhood Council. I received one of those letters, and I was really shocked because I never expected anything like that to happen here in Missoula. I grew up in Texas, and I had to go through all that discrimination, and so it was kind of difficult for me to see the movie, and it just brought back so many memories. But I'm so grateful that that film was shown, and I wouldn't like that to happen here. I think that if we had had a group like Billings back when I was growing up in Texas that showed compassion and saw something like that happening, and they grouped together and said, no, it's not going to happen in this town. Things like what I had to experience would never have happened there. So I'm really grateful, and I'm here to do whatever I can to see that it doesn't happen. Thank you.
My name is Suzanne Wasulchik. I live up the Rattlesnake too, and I never thought about the neighborhood councils responding to this sort of thing. And boy, I'd much rather have the neighborhood councils respond to the literature that, I received in my neighborhood than whine about the latest housing development that's going up. At any rate, I'm the director of Children's Religious Education at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship here in town. This Saturday I went to the Day of Harmony in Superior, and they had a minister from Spokane who talked, and initially it had been billed that he was bringing his choir, and the most sobering note was when he said that he had talked with his choir, and they said, no way were they going to Montana. And that's so sad. They were afraid to come to our town. You know, what do we do to tell people that they're all welcome here? That if they come in love and harmony and peace, that they indeed don't have to worry to come into this community. I think that's all.
I'm Karen Lose, a member of Faith People of Action over there. The Montana Human Rights Network, for a long time I lived in Helena and was part of it there. I grew up in Billings, and I remember some of the things that used to happen in Billings, probably still do actually, in spite of all their work, which I'm very proud of. Not very long, I lived in Missoula. One of the first things I was responsible for here in Missoula was to do security for the Pride weekend, to head up their security team for that. And I have a lot of ties in the gay community. I'm very concerned about the Church of the Creator. One of the things I have done recently is attend a hate crimes conference that the Justice Department had in Bozeman this spring. Pete Lawrenson was also there as a police chief, and he was a speaker there. And I'm bringing this up because one of the things that was presented to us as an idea was from the FBI and the Justice Department was they were very interested in what they called creative prosecution against groups like the Church of the Creator. And it occurs to me that Missoula is maybe one of the few places in the nation where some kind of that creative prosecution could occur. And I talked with Pete Lawrenson about it, and he's talked with the FBI. So they're trying to put together some kind of a case that presents this type of literature when it comes to people's homes like Guadalupe. They can feel it as a hate crime in itself. When it comes to your home, that there may be some level of prosecution on that. And it would involve a lot of community work too. Through the police department to get people to actually report their feelings when this comes to their home, how they feel about it. And so that's why I'm bringing that up here. I'm hoping that we can get a lot of community response, not to just toss the stuff, but to respond to it in a level with some legality that maybe reach deeper to this group. They're being brought to trial in Illinois, and the more they're brought to trial, even if the case is not very good, the deeper they feel it in their pockets and the more they're put out of business. And they work for a while in that regard, so I'd like to see it happen to them again.
And I'm Joe Lose, I'm married to Karen. We're also members of PFLAG, parents and family and friends of lesbian and gay people, and active in that, and through that close to many lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people that feel the pain, prejudice, and are concerned about that. I also work for an organization called the Casey Family Program, which is a program involved in helping kids find families, foster families, adoptive families, when they can't be raised in birth family. And we provide care for a diverse population of children, and many of the children experience prejudice in our schools and in our stores every day, and very concerned about that, very concerned to have them experience a community that reaches out and helps. And out of that concern, we're looking at wanting to put together a group of people that maybe we could pool our resources and bring a group from the People's Institute here next year and lead an Undoing Racism workshop as hopefully at the beginning of an annual event that can reach people deeply and with a lot of historical understanding for the oppression and racism that's really just built into our society and our economy in many ways. And so that's another reason why I'm here tonight as well.
I'm Roberta Manus from the University Neighborhood Council and Homeowners Association and other organizations, I guess. My reaction to this hate literature when I got the first piece left at my door is to give it to my grandson who was home for lunch, who was 17 at the time, and I said, why don't you take this back to school with you and give it to your history teacher and ask if you could have a discussion about the history of this sort of thing. And so that was my approach, is education discussion, so that it isn't an icon of terror like the swastika. Some of us react pretty viscerally to those kinds of things, but to use it as an educational tool. I don't know what the teacher did with it. It was probably not fair to send it cold, but that was the way I tried to deal with it. I also believe very strongly that whilst it is very easy to condemn this kind of blatant, overt stuff, there are more subtle kinds of things that are hurtful and damaging to communities. I have myself been victimized by some of these things, malicious gossip, untruths that are spread for all sorts of reasons. And I don't know whether hate crimes are an extension of incivility or if it's some other pathology. I didn't finish graduate school, so I can't give you a profound answer to that one. But to my mind, it's easy to hate what's blatant. What we need to be more careful about is the more subtle stuff. Sorry for the lecture, folks.
I'm Philip Perzik, and I'm here partly because of, I guess, the leadership team of the University District, as well as several years as a board member of the Homeowners Association. I would echo what Roberta said. There's a lot of subtle malice afloat in Missoula right now, and it's really troubling to me because it seems that there's a lot of separation instead of people coming together. We're seeming to be at major odds. And that's why I'm here tonight. I'd like to see all of this addressed, not just the hate literature, but also, the subtle innuendo that comes up. It's terribly unfair and counterproductive to trying to do things that we're all very interested in doing, which is to preserve Missoula as we know it. We're here to preserve this community. We love Missoula. I haven't been here as long as you have. I came here in the 60s, left, came back in the 70s to go to school, came back in the 80s to live, or late 80s. So I think it's serious enough that all of us should be concerned. And we should condemn that literature that we see frequently, but we should also ask ourselves what's happening with normally civil people with this sense of malice that's emerging from them.
I'm Paul Southwell. I'm a scientist with the U.S. Forest Service, and I'm here on behalf of the University Neighborhood Council and the University Homeowners Association. I came from an area of Ohio where racism was a very integral part of society, And it was almost something that was passed on from generation to generation. And in the 20 years I've lived here, I've almost forgotten what that was like. And now with a lot of this literature coming up, it kind of startles me that something like this might be creeping into Missoula. And that's one of the reasons I'm here. The other is what Bill and Roberta said, how just in the past year it seems like our neighborhood is kind of divided amongst lines, more politically than anything, but it's made enemies out of people where we should really...
We're formerly friends.
My name is Jenny Mish, and I'm a newcomer to Missoula. I am helping out at the Jeanette Rankin Resource Center and looking for my place to contribute to this town. And I just want to say that I'm really moved to hear each of you and to see the video. And I'm interested in helping in whatever I can. I have experience in Arizona and some in California, working with youth around learning about difference and fear and how violence happens. And I know how hungry youth are in general to have clear, be offered ways to reach across and bridge differences. So if I can help, I want to.
I want to make a few comments just following up on things I heard. One is Mr. Comstock. So, I would like to say that Pete Lawrenson was unable to come tonight, but has taken a very impressive lead on this issue from the beginning and a clear voice. And I'm proud to have him as the police chief. I don't know if you want to say anything in particular about some of the strategies that you've in the city determined to be the right direction. You want to take a little time to do that one?
I wish I had Pete here to do it.
Yeah.
I think that we are still struggling as a city, as are pretty much any other city in the country, how to deal with this. So I really don't know the spectrum of the things that Pete is working on. I do know one of the things that we started doing a couple of years ago was to try to, when we get a report of a drop of hate literature, we'll put that on a map and make a record of it, and we'll also try to get a copy of what it was that was dropped. And I really like the idea of neighborhood councils figuring out ways to respond to this. I also like the idea of kind of dispersed anti-terrorism. And what I mean by that, maybe a way we can help, and you can, and neighborhood councils in the city can work together on doing this, is if when you go back to your neighborhood councils
And
associations, mention that the city does try to keep, the police department in particular tries to keep track of where there are drops, and ask people to call us when you get one so that we can keep track of it. And what I can have Pete do in return is we'll contact the neighborhood council of the area where the drop was so that you know that there was a drop there. And then what you can do is figure out what would be the next kind of guerrilla action to take from that step. But maybe if we just know a little bit more about what's going on in our neighborhoods, I have the feeling that that will help neighborhoods kind of figure out their own responses. I think there's a place for the whole city to be making responses, but I also think that you get quite a bit more effective and you get a better diversity of responses if different neighborhoods say, well, we don't like it, so we're going to do thus and such. And so that's just an idea. Interested in what you think about it.
Can I say something? I think that's a really good idea to involve the neighborhood for several reasons. One, I have a very dear friend who is black and has been through the cross burning on the front lawn and the funny phone calls and all this and that for 30 years. Every once in a while something will happen. I can deal with that a whole hell of a lot easier and more effectively than she can because she was from the South and it just gets her right in the gut and makes her
really trembling to try to deal with it herself. I think it makes more sense maybe for supportive neighbors who don't have all that baggage from childhood that they're bringing to the situation to adhere to it.
I think in the film,
And we certainly have the responsibility.
in that film, you can really see that. And one thing I just wanted to comment about my response to the film that was probably my strongest was my own prejudice. I think following up a little bit on knowing a little bit about Billings' history, that I'm surprised at, and so I realized that was my own prejudice against sort of the normal people of Billings, that they would have such a compassionate response to the Indian community. And what a powerful, powerful way to protect each other and across neighborhoods. Not, I mean, I see this as structured through neighborhoods, but to having it work across neighborhoods. And to recognize where we have we are those people. You know, we're all of those people in some way. You know, we've all been victims, we've all felt hatred, we've all acted without compassion, and kind of helps us understand all those perspectives and maybe do a fuller job of responding by first kind of seeing that in ourselves. I'm going to try to just pull a few threads out, given that the neighborhood focus is a strong one here, our concerns for our own children, and the comment that in Ohio you learned that racism was passed on from generation to generation. And we're in a time and place where maybe we can also be pivotal in breaking a chain like that by raising our children differently and making that it's not okay in this town to raise racist children. And there's a lot of long-term thinking in that, and long-term getting started, but knowing that it's a long-term job of raising children with a different attitude. And then we have a much more specific, immediate need to reflect some organization. Mrs. Fishburne, I think it was you that brought up that the neighborhood councils and or associations, and I know I'm not sure of the completeness of the system at this point, but whatever would work best in a neighborhood to have a reporting system to the team that's established, so that we aren't losing track. I heard today somebody came in the Peace Center to say that in the Lower Rattlesnake earlier this year, a household where 2 women live had Dyke painted in big letters on the side of their home. I asked, did you call the mayor's office? Did you or did they? This was a friend of theirs, and she said, well, she wasn't sure, how if the information ever came beyond that. And it's in your neighborhood. So, how do we do a better job, at least in our neighborhoods, of having a team? And I loved that in Billings they said, let's call the painting union. Yeah. And what an incredible response. And then I guess the supervisor from there was, to me, the most moving speaker in realizing that you could paint over the scars on the building, but those children would never forget. But the children also wouldn't forget the people that came. And Ms. Hilliard's experience of that, if they had come in your neighborhood, it would have changed your life. And we could be those people, and we can, in our leadership roles in our neighborhoods, help spearhead. That's the kind of response we have in Missoula, that we'll know who to call, and that will bring people together to respond with compassion. And I wanted to get back to Mr. Stengel bringing up the problem with media coverage, and it's an interesting one, and I hope maybe we can come up with some kind of consensus about that. In the film, obviously the media coverage helped. And at the same time, the media coverage has brought a lot of attention to this group that, according to Chief Lawrenson, last year their national meeting had 8 people attend. But if you read about it, you'd think it was a huge thing. And maybe it is a growing movement and that we shouldn't downplay that, but is the media actually giving them more power? And how, if we're dealing with this in our neighborhoods, in our community, in a compassionate way, and we know that, and we are taking care of each other, do we need to mobilize the media around it? Or do we have a network that works independent of that? Well, put that on the table for responses.
I was involved in the Montana Association of Churches when this Billings thing came up And there was another activity in Helena, one side or the other, I don't remember whether it was before or after, where one of these pseudo-church groups announced that they were going to move their international headquarters to Helena. And the churches got together and got the media behind them and very forcefully said, that's not okay. You're not welcome here. And they couldn't have done it without the media's forcefulness. I mean, you can't communicate big messages without the media.
Maybe it's situation specific.
I was just going to say, it just brings to mind the idea of making sure that when we're networking and drawing people together, that we make ties within with journalists and other folks in the media arts, so that we're all approaching it on the same leg, and therefore we can use the media coverage or media action in a way that is furthering what we're trying to do here. Just to remember that making those ties are maybe even twice as important, because they cover twice as much ground.
I didn't know about the hate mail that has been going around, and I think that's disturbing. Because I think if you call it by what it is, and it becomes, it's just letting people know this is happening, so that, I mean, if it's just isolated here and there aren't enough people there to do anything about it. But if people recognize that there is these drops that are happening in Missoula, I think media is critical, even at this level. Just so that you know it's there and watch out for this stuff.
What about creating a stronger network of communication through the councils so that this particular topic, there's a quick way to generate a quick communication system from the police department, through the mayor's office to the neighborhood council leadership team, to be announced at the next meeting? Is that, because really it has been in the newspaper. I don't know how much, but I know that's where I initially encountered it. So what's the way we reach the most people so that people really are aware of what's going on?
I think notifying the neighborhood council leadership team is a nice idea, but realistically, in most of the neighborhood councils, that's not going to lead to instant response. I mean, it's a good system, but it's a time-consuming, cumbersome system to convene the whole council.
It's hard to get around to your neighbor's door, too. I've done some of that in talking to them, particularly because of the street situation. And it is very time-consuming to catch them home and to spend some time discussing things with them.
Gary, did you?
Just one comment. A couple of years ago, when there were some hate crimes in town, and there was an effort to a petition drive and a letter to the paper, I thought the Missoulian reporters covered the issues pretty well. I thought that the Missoulian editorial about it was kind of snide, and I thought it was a case where if people decide to use a major media effort, then it's got to be done in a massive way and be very successful, and that depends a lot on the predisposition of the people that publish the newspaper and on the radio and TV stations, whether that's successful or not. But there's another way. I always like the idea of doing the door-to-door leaflet is one good way to hit every door in a neighborhood. And I don't know about other neighborhood associations or councils in other areas. On the north side, I think there's been kind of tends to be a crew of people that are pretty good at stuffing leaflets indoors. And there might be some kind of appropriate response that could happen pretty quickly if people have a leaflet in case your neighborhood gets lit dropped with the hate literature, lit drop it with something else. There's another kind of tactical advantage that can bring too, and that comes down to kind of the neighborhood watch idea. But I think it stands to reason that, what I worry about with the hate literature is the next step, and that's the rocks coming through the windows and the crosses burning on lawns and that kind of thing. And by having kind of a crew of people that can do lit drops around a neighborhood, you can kind of get an idea of who should be watching out for who. I mean, if somebody gets threatened, then they know at least that the person that's handing out the good stuff in the neighborhood is not a threat. People can kind of get an idea of where to keep their eyes open, and if you see somebody hopping over the fence into your neighbor's yard and your neighbor has had threats before, then yeah, hop on it. Don't just assume that it's kids playing, but be real aware. And I don't know, just a thought of another way of doing the media.
I was going to remind most of the neighborhood councils are having a meeting in October, and it might be something that we could put on our agenda. Because that's going to be put in a pamphlet and given to every, taken to every house and delivered.
Well, one thing that I'm struck by, and have been in future incarnations myself, former incarnations where I was doing some work for the city many years ago now on communication and public life, and now that the neighborhood council network is throughout the city, is it complete now, Mike? For the first time, really since old style neighborhoods broke down, there is a mechanism that can enhance lives in a lot of scales. And I'm thinking about two-way communication through this that can grow. And some neighborhoods, I think, are further along than others. And we're to begin with, recognizing, organizations that had been established prior to that. But I'm thinking about old Chicago-style organizing and block captains. And could the neighborhood councils around this issue in maybe kind of a neighborhood watch mentality. I did visit with one fellow from the Neighborhood Watch organization and had hoped to get them here, but I caught that kind of late in the process. Because he said he thought that organization would be quite interested in helping with this process. But if you had people not only disseminating information, like there's been a literature drop or this is happening in our town, but also to get the information back, like Perry was saying, if you knew one of your neighbors had some hateful expression toward them, that it would be a way to both let them know, okay, call on us. We're here, we're concerned, and it would be two-way communication, and people would feel that this neighborhood watch was more of a protective, caring body in addition to the safety, the ways the neighborhood watch has worked prior to that. Ralph?
Paul Shively, who's the regional organizer for the Montana Human Rights Network, prepared a response sheet to the Church of the Creator, and it lays out some of the myths that the church puts out about itself, and it has an address that you can send the form to. They recommend sending it to the police chief and also to the network, but I think it's similar to what you were thinking about, Perry. Two other quick points. Thursday night there's going to be a block party here in Missoula in front of Dan Hassett's building. He's one of the leading reverends of the Church of the Creator. And the network, rather than confront the Church of the Creator up in Superior, we were there the last two times they met, and the last time several of them were wearing sidearms, and there were verbal confrontations, and people are coming in now, we think, from Los Angeles who want to confront them. And it looked like a volatile situation. So rather than go up there this year, we're having a block party out in front of Dan Hassett's house. There'll be music by the Velcro Sheep, and there'll be ice cream and soda, and there'll be a couple of speakers. And we're just trying to rally people in Missoula to come to, an expression of diversity and cooperation and tolerance, and show that we can say something positive about who we are. We don't have to always confront them directly, though sometimes I think that is called for. The second thing is there's going to be a big human rights conference coming up in October of this year It's the joint annual conference of the Northwest Coalition Against Malicious Harassment out of Seattle and the Montana Human Rights Network. There'll be about 400 people here, and we'll have some of the leading experts on human rights from around the country. And we're blanketing the town now with literature about that, and you may have seen something in the paper. We've had the regional director, the executive director here. So I'd invite all of you to, if you're interested in human rights, to see about registering for the conference. I think we're going to sell out early, and I know we've gotten great cooperation from the city and the county and the university and the Forest Service, and we're just delighted about that. But it speaks well for Missoula. But all of these things, I think, all of the ideas that have been presented are very good, and the more we have, the better, rather than just one being the right one. I think we need to work through our unions and through our social organizations, through our churches, and through our neighborhood councils too.
I have a concern with, like, you look at the type of age groups that these people recruit. I mean, growing up in Billings, we had that literature dropped off somewhere in our high schools, like every couple months. I wonder if anything like that's creeping up into the schools here.
Yes, it is. They're trying to recruit in the schools here, and they've been recruiting on their webpage directly, appealing to youth. And it's not accidental that the leadership in the Church of the Creator now is very young. Matt Hale's 27. He's very media savvy, and that seems to be one of the patterns of the hate
I
groups
wanted
now.
to say more about that too. One of the things that literature does is it promotes that webpage to the youth. And just because only 8 people attend their national meeting here doesn't mean that they're not a large group. They are a very large group, and it's an internet. They don't need to come to the meeting because they can communicate on the computer all the time. I wanted to be more specific about the hate crime law than I was. I hope I can be more specific about it. Because of the way the law is written in reference to home, to your home and your safety in home. And because of the specific comments that are made in the literature, that people who, if there's a possibility that the people who are referenced in those specific ways, who belong to those specific groups, if they receive it in their home, it may be more than, it may cross the line of free speech. It could become a hate crime to a threat into your home space. And so I would like that information to be available to people, because if there is any chance of the police department being able to gather enough information about homes that this literature has come to, where it does become a specific threat rather than just an affront to your sensibilities, but where it becomes a specific threat to the group that you belong to, then a lot of those phone calls need to be made to the police department so that that information can be gathered. That means that we need to make sure that everybody who receives one does call and does let them know.
Are you saying they're trying to put together a class action suit, or?
I'm not sure exactly where it stands right now. I can't speak to that because I wasn't part of the conversation with the FBI and the attorneys, but yes, it's being worked on seriously.
Like, I wonder if it wouldn't be possible for somehow or other to engage the city's existing early notification network that it uses, to notify all the existing organizations, groups of neighbors for other important things that happen in the community that having to do with City Hall, local politics. If that couldn't also be engaged when something happens in the line of drop hate literature or whatever, a hate crime, if that wouldn't be a way to, amongst other things, help mobilize people across the community as to respond earlier.
Put it in with the sewer bill.
You know,
Everyone reads it, right?
I think it would really help this communication that we've talked about quite a bit, and I think that we certainly want to establish. If some of you who are going to the community forum at the next meeting would see if the community forum wouldn't request that. Information that you've requested tends to be a good deal more meaningful than information that somebody sent you free and gratis. And I think probably the community forum would like to receive that information, and I'd be delighted if they would say so, and that we would talk about just what information they want, and I'm sure the city would be very happy to provide it in whatever way was requested or that we worked out as best between ourselves.
I wonder if we can't pull a few of these ideas together in thinking about the idea that the Montana Human Rights Network has a response that tells more about the Church of the Creator. Wondering if we could have a response that tells more about us as a community. I was thinking about the language that they chose in Billings to put on that menorah. So that dedicated to live in harmony was the line that kind of jumped out at me. But that maybe our neighborhood councils would come up with some language that could be approved through that body of what we'd like to say about ourselves as neighbors together in community. And at the same time integrate some of the, Mrs. Lewis, what is your first? Karen. Karen, if you would, you know, what your idea about if people understood that if they reported and it became, they understood that it was a powerful act on their part to understand that it's a hate crime, that somebody's crossed that line for them, and if that's getting reported back in, that you're kind of working on both levels, and the response then, really brings a lot of strength. If what you're getting back is, here's another piece of counter literature from your neighbors. We believe in protecting each other, living in harmony, and here's what we can do when we're affronted. Is that something that the councils is set up to maybe address through the forum, or how might that work?
I think if we have something like that, to go with door to door through the neighborhood councils and the neighborhood associations, that would be the most effective way to do a community-wide response. Just putting it in the newspaper or on the TV, there's nothing as effective as knocking on your neighbor's door and saying, I know you got this, and as a community, I wanted you to have this. Mm-hmm. And I'm part of the Neighborhood Watch system that's in East Missoula. I know East Missoula is not officially part of the city, but we have a Neighborhood Watch system out there in a pretty active little community, and that would be the most effective thing to do. And I think if we had like you said, I think that's excellent, a variety of different things to present to people in response.
Who would be the body that would come together to write something that could at least be taken to council, neighborhood councils and associations for approval and amendments, and come up with some final document that we all say yes to?
2 years ago, we referred to the events that happened 3 years ago when we had the No Hate in Our Town meetings. That was the occasion for the police chief, and I think, or the police department, I think perhaps the city too, to pass some resolutions about the kind of body they were in the case of the police department. And there's some of that language in those resolutions. I know I have them in my old notes. But I would think you could pull that together, and I'd be glad to give you Paul Shively's statement. And I think that's a great idea to pull some of that together. Both a critique of the hate groups that we see around us, as well as an affirmation of our own resolution strength.
How many here, just kind of nods or show of hands, thinks that would be one positive direction, and let people know how they could then report back if they're offended? So.
Make another, just a suggestion that might work with that is whatever literature is passed out door to door, possibly have it so that information such as you're talking is on one side and the other side could be a window placard, welcome neighbor, we believe in whatever. And something that those who chose to put that in their window, for one thing, you'd always have the numbers to call if you got hate mail or a threat. And for another thing, your neighbors would be able to kind of identify your household as one that it's okay for the kids to go to if they get harassed or something like that. So, that's good.
That's a great idea. Well, we already have kind of that sort of thing with the McGruff signs that we put on our doors, but probably could accommodate others. Not, because there's just one McGruff sign on each block as a rule.
I'd be interested in the Peace Center and the Advocates for Social Justice, who I believe are sponsors tonight, for example, preparing a document like this in the belief that there may be a number of different uses of it, there may be a number of different variants of it, but so that the next time a large group of people get together and talk, there is a something or a couple of somethings that can do that job, and they're available. I think that would be real helpful to us. And I would wonder, with regard to the legal question, whether there's a local lawyer who would be willing to do pro bono work on that question, which is just a really tough legal question, I think, and I'd be happy if there was a professional hacking away at that and seeing what the prospects, in fact, were, and whether, when an opportunity arises, we would be farther forward and there would be a person who perhaps we could look to then to pick that up and
Well, I
move
think
with it.
I need to find out more clearly about what exactly has happened so far, and then find out who to report that to, perhaps.
I would think that on the boards of some of the organizations that have representatives here tonight, there are certainly some lawyers who have an interest in this sort of social
The law
cause.
school is often
And that we
happy
might,
to help
be
with it.
thinking about who might
I
be
know that
asked
Pete-
to do
Pete
some special
Lawrenson
work on
is
that.
looking into that, and he may have it.
Yeah,
Tab
with
on
the
it.
FBI and Justice Department already considering it, so.
I think the suggestion that somebody prepare a document that could be presented for discussion is a good one. The community forum actually has already addressed this once. We had the document from the advocates, and it was recommended that we pass them around when there were drops, and I don't think anything probably really came of it. It was just a kind
Well,
of
in a way,
nice thing to do.
it doesn't go anywhere. You
Yeah,
learn
that's-
more, but it doesn't help you understand who you might contact, report in, and you don't
Right.
understand that your neighbors are going to protect, help you not have this happen. So to expand on that would be valuable, I think. Well, Liz, you're on that forum?
Not anymore. I was at the time, though. Kathy is, and Harry is.
I am.
You are.
Did you?
Yeah, if I may just for a minute, I was in Billings during the Christmas when all that went on. My family lives there now, and I completely agree that going to high school in Billings, it was very hard. And I went to the Catholic high school. And even there, I think it was a little bit stronger than it was in other high schools in Billings. But at the same time, at the university, when I ran for student body president, my vice president is a Native American student. And we faced that prejudice when we ran as a woman and as a Native American student on such a large campus. And one of the things that we've done within our own Senate and within our own groups on campus is we've utilized the things that the university has already set up. We have something called the Multicultural Alliance that was set up 2 years ago at the university and has two excellent people that run it, that set up lecture series, that will do hate prevention workshops. I encourage neighborhood councils to contact these people and have them come and speak at your meetings. The other thing that we've done is we've done an outreach program to the different people at the university. The university is a very diverse community within the Missoula community, but we take advantage of that and we welcome these people to our own meetings, and we ask them to tell us about their culture, to tell us about their lives, and to share with the rest of the community something that makes them different. And although at times Missoula can appear very homogeneous, I likewise encourage the neighborhood councils to take those people from their own communities, like we're trying to do at the university, and bring them together with the other groups. Also at the university, we have the Lambda Alliance, which is the gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual organization. And I always forget one, but I think I covered most of them. And they're a great organization to also, Missoula has a very large community, and it's very good to also have those people represented in your neighborhood councils. And the Women's Center. a lot of times that's kind of the forgotten minority is women. And it's very important to contact them as well. They have some great workshops. And finally, I guess the only other thing, as a student, as a young person, who we keep talking about the youth and getting them involved, it's very important to me to remember that the reason that these people spread this message of hate and the reason that things in history have happened because of hate is because of ignorance. And in my opinion, it's wonderful to have a system set up that people can call the mayor's office and notify us if this hate literature is dropped. But nothing is going to change in Montana, and nothing's going to change anywhere unless we do start with the younger generations and even my generation. And so that's why I really encourage everyone to take advantage of all the opportunities in Missoula, because it is a very, very alive community, and to bring those into your neighborhood councils like we try to do at the university. Because that way, the people in the neighborhood who might not even have prejudice or think they don't have prejudice will realize, oh, wait a minute, I kind of thought that all lesbians had really short hair and wore their shirts rolled up. I mean, it's very funny, the prejudices that people have and don't realize it. So I encourage you to take advantage of those, and you're always welcome to call my office for more information on those.
I want to echo
To
that.
be proactive.
The Multicultural Alliance and Ami Thurber that has worked with us on a number of issues, and she's fabulous. And we have a little program through the Peace Center right now just to funnel funds directly to sponsoring young people to be able to attend the prejudice reduction workshops that they lead. Just last year we sponsored 10 Hellgate students to attend those, and they said it changed their lives. And we'd love to see, just following what you're saying, as many young people as can attend those workshops. And they offered several this summer, and there's major training in October. So if any of you would like to sponsor a young person, it's around $30 depending on which workshop they do. And if you earmark that through the Peace Center to go to the prejudice, it's NCBI, National Coalition Building Institute. That will get it right to a young person, a high school student to attend. I'm curious, like for the university, wouldn't be part of this network we're talking about. Who else is here that doesn't feel like they would be represented or part of what we're talking about
I'm
generating?
actually part of we have a representative from the student body on campus that attends the neighborhood council in the university district.
And then how well does that get back through the university system?
It's actually done pretty well. Before I was president, I was the representative.
Oh, that's great.
It was really the first time I think that a student was involved, and so it took a lot of kind of shifting on my part and shifting on most of the homeowners' parts, but I think we're on our way to getting the dorm residents
you would be
involved.
then. This who here doesn't feel like they'd be held under this umbrella?
Well, I live on Mullen Road.
Uh-huh.
And the Mullen Road Memorial is defunct, but they have an Elmore Estates. Is there anybody else out there from that direction? I mean, I don't know what's functioning out there right now. And the other thing, I don't see anybody else here from the local community. Were the outlying communities invited?
Not really. It
So
doesn't.
I think those are two communities that would be really good.
Yeah.
The county sponsors community councils in Lowell, Sealy Lake.
Clinton, I think.
Clinton. So, which are essentially roughly equivalent to the.
So community councils in outlying towns would want to have an opportunity to be part of that. Thanks. Okay.
And I think I just happened to live in East Missoula. I don't think I was invited because I live in East Missoula. And I went and visited my neighbor who actually started the Neighborhood Watch, and he said he was going to come tonight, but something must have happened so that he couldn't. He's been a real leader in the East Missoula community. So I think the other communities, not just the city proper, but...
The other thing, Sally, is there are neighborhood associations or homeowner association. I'm sure there must be one in Elmore.
I know there's a functioning one in Elmore, but I don't see that here. I just want
So, and OPG has a contact person to mail to there. So I think we pull together those.
Or is there a group here where we have 5 minutes for a committee to form who actually would try to flesh out a statement that then could be taken back to the councils and the outlying areas and actually work on understanding and the associations and understanding what the web of communication is and how to, one thing that we all need to be thoughtful about is how much energy it takes, and so what's the most effective streamlined way to get to get this working, to reach the most people. And I'd be happy to offer the Peace Center as a meeting place. I'm not in a position to be able to spearhead this. I think we'd like to see ourselves maybe as shepherds rather than out on the vanguard of it. We can probably help mobilize some other people who would be interested, but are there people here tonight who think, yeah, this is important to create this, to weave a little tighter fabric of protection and to let people know how to get this two-way communication at least established throughout the area? Who'd like to? Is it Kathleen? Thank you.
I'll work on it, Sally. I won't be a leader of it. I don't want to do that, but I'll contribute some time to it.
Thank you.
I will also contribute time.
Thank you. I will too. I appreciate it. Well, that's a good start. And
Yeah.
Is it Jessica? Okay. Any others feeling like they're good wordsmiths or networkers or? Well, I think that'll do it. Those of you who said you would help if we could just figure out a time that might work for everybody. And then, is anybody volunteered on the forum as a way to get back to the council structure?
Well, I can bring us to the forum.
Okay.
You know, my understanding is just to represent the discussion that we had here tonight with regard to the possibility of the forum's role in this. And Mr. Morgan mentioned specific role that they may have as a political body to come before the governing body of the city to ask for some initiatives in the informational network. I'd glad to bring that before the community forum.
Thank you. Okay. Were there other comments before we conclude?
I have a question. Where's the Reverend's house? Where's that?
It's in the 1300 block of South 4th West. Right.
Could I ask a question or just interject something? Maybe this is all set up and it's too late to even say that, but boy, I think you're courting something you don't want when you start having events, protest events at someone's home. You know, I mean, as despicable as this person probably is, still, we would not like it a darn bit if some of the other people in the community who are controversial would have the same thing happen to them. For example, the Planned Parenthood people. It's not unheard of for that sort of thing. So I wonder about not to mention the ACLU. You know, I don't know if that was a consideration at all. But for my part, this is not a message I want you to send to my grandchildren, that it's okay to go to somebody's house and harass them, because I don't think it is okay. So keep that in mind when I know it's just a block party, but keep that in mind in case anybody starts hooping and hollering that that's not maybe appropriate. Am I the only one that feels that way?
Well, I had that reaction when I read about it. I thought they were going to his tactics.
Yeah, well, that's Klan tactics, you know. So, I mean, not to have a potluck supper, for heaven's sake, but to do,
to target a home.
To target a home, yeah.
Even if it's just targeting, it's kind of like picketing someone's home or something.
Is that what it is? I guess I must have misunderstood.
You know, I think I understand the concerns that you have. I think we're trying to make it a celebration. He doesn't live in an individual home.
I don't care. It's his home. If he sleeps there, it's his home.
Right.
As despicable as he may be, and probably is. The only reason I brought it up is just to say, please, those who go, keep this concern in mind so it is not construed as an okay to torment people in their homes.
Okay, well, I guess it would be a long debate to get into as to when you show your opposition to Nazis and groups that have committed murders, and that I'm not saying that lightly. One person is serving a life sentence in Florida now for having murdered a black Gulf War veteran. These people have been convicted of crime.
Oh, I know, they're
So
terrible.
I'm asking you, I'm simply asking you that if more people had stood up in Nazi Germany and other places where fascism and other forms of totalitarianism had reared their heads, and I'm not saying that the Church of the Creator is that big a threat, but these kinds of threats start somewhere.
That's right.
And people do need to stand up and be counted.
9 years ago, someone legally burned a cross in a field behind my house. And I think that passive resistance, a group of people gathering together, not intending just to pass a message, not angry, just level, is a different message. It's one of the only vehicles of change that minorities have.
The ACLU wouldn't be opposed to our the ACLU would not be opposed to our making a statement. This is a form of free speech too.
Well, so long as it is a harassment of the man's home.
I'd like to ask that those of you who might want to talk about this more, I feel a responsibility to dismiss the meeting because it's gone a little bit past 9 o'clock. And just thank you so much for your participation tonight and your caring. So if you'll meet with me if you're going to be on this committee, appreciate that.